Continuation of our commissioners meeting today. At this time, we are in a work session, and we got several items we want to talk about. I'm going to turn it over to our county manager, Mr. Smith, this time.
Yes, sir. One thing I would like to bring to you, a number of you have already talked to your legislators in the last 24 hours, but the Association of County Commissioners sent us this information. I've also, I don't know if did you get a copy of this too? Did you get it? Okay, all right. It is the North Carolina Tax Reform Impact on Counties as of June 17th, 2013. I know a number of you have called legislators, and that was basically the request. But if you look at where you are in a current situation, they have a North Carolina House plan. What we're asking in the association is to stay away from the North Carolina Senate plan. That hits us for a negative of $1.2 million in revenue cuts as a county. That's 2 cents on our tax rate, just to give you some equivalent there. You know, they're saying options to make up revenue loss: cut services, re-levy sales tax on food, increase property tax is your only option to make up that difference. And I think the association is asking that if anything is supported, that it would be this House plan and not the Senate plan. So I'm really opening it up to you as a board. And I don't know that our position would be any different, but Mr. Chair, I'm just bringing it to you guys for any formal action.
Okay, is anyone on the board have any discussion on this?
Mr. Smith, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. From what I'm seeing in the Senate plan, the basic loss of revenue is the repeal of the sales tax on food. And I believe the legislation is calling that. I mean, I don't understand why you would repeal it and then turn around and say, well, county commissioners, y'all can reassess it, re-levy that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not understanding why
Well, the other
that would
thing
be.
that's going to be a problem, and you're seeing some of the previous emails from the association, Tom McGee, those guys have done a really good job getting this information out to us. The other problem is you'll create disparity between counties, because then you'll have counties who'll have it and some who won't.
Yeah.
So a county who doesn't put it in place, people are going to cross those lines and go where it's cheaper and say, well, it's only a couple of pennies. You'd be surprised at what that will do.
But you haven't heard of why the wisdom in the Senate plan to repeal it, but then to allow counties to re-levy.
Other than they reduce their budget. I mean, it's reducing their budget, but it's increasing ours by 2 cents. And you would have to look at additional cuts, re-levy the sales tax on food, or increase property tax. I mean, those really are your options. And there has been this is why we're doing that. We had this, and Borden may recall, and Pam, 90s and Marcia, early 90s, mid 90s, we had this discussion on the food tax where the changes occurred years back. We had this same discussion and we're able to maintain, but we gained in one area where we lost, so we kind of kept it even. But in this case, it's a loss. And so this is a not even a slippery slope, it's a cliff for us. So the association is asking us to, at a minimum, talk to our legislators that this North Carolina Senate plan cannot go through for counties.
Question.
Yes.
I saw the email that we got from the association,
Sure.
and it said it would be an average of so and so. But this is actually what it's going to cost Wayne County. This is our breakout.
That's right.
Okay, we need to share this with Mr. Senator Pate.
And
I know you sent him an email.
and I sent him this very attachment.
Okay, this was the same document. Okay, Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, but we need to make sure they understand this.
Mr. King.
Of course, when you look at sales tax and options to make up the revenue loss, you have all these other areas, i.e., the House appropriated $250,000 for MAC. They've allocated $1 million to be distributed 4 ways. So Seymour Johnson gets $250,000. So when you look at, when we're giving them 90,000, and then you get the House giving them $250,000, you just look at all these different options that the state's going to come up with monies to appropriate that you can take away to offset some of these expenditures. Has nothing to do with sales tax, but
Sure.
as you're looking at just the overall plan, there's a lot of areas where you can cut back to make up for some of the losses that you can make up in sales tax.
Any other comment? Sir?
I would, I'd almost just focus in on the sales tax revenues in the Senate plan and focus in saying that we would support a budget that would continue with the sales tax on food levy. And I think that kind of encompasses both plans, and when they go into conference, we would just support the continuation of that.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of the way I'm
There
looking
might
at
be
it.
some other little minute details, but I think for the most part, that's the bulk of it. And I was going over that email again to see if there was any other detail reading this. But I think you're correct.
You want to support the sales tax refund?
Yes,
I beg your
sales
pardon?
tax refund,
You want to support that?
yes,
The sales tax refund.
Yeah, that's-
$487,000.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, yes. That was out of the Senate plan, too.
When the county pays sales tax, you can get a refund. That's why you have in the past paid for the school. The county has built the schools so you could get the tax refund.
Back.
Because the Board of Education doesn't have that same authority
Yep.
and
yep.
ability.
I see that.
So that's the two, almost, what,
Well, but let
over
me-
$3 million.
When you say the Board of Education doesn't have that, now, is that sales tax, when you use that rationale, just to help me out, is that philosophy tied anyway with the county taking, assuming responsibility for all the buildings and everything else, so that you would recoup the sales tax on that also?
No, this has happened only, the Board of Education has voluntarily conveyed a school building, the ones that are just being completed, voluntarily conveyed those to the county so they would have the additional money from the sales tax on the materials that went in those schools.
Okay,
And then when, depending on the type of way it's financed, the schools will ultimately get the property back.
all right, because I just would not want to, unless I know it's starting to come in a little bit quick, but I just would not want, and I heard you say we need to support the sales tax refund, that's what I heard you say, myself.
Yes,
But I would not want the board, and the reason I tried to ask that question the way I asked it, I would not want to have our support of that to be construed with us taking away the school's building from the,
well, no, well, they don't have the ability to get this anyway, so that's where we have gone in and taken title to schools so that we could do that and get that back. And then the agreement was with the counties that that money, let's say it was $200,000, I'm just using a number of, in a school construction in sales tax, we get that refund, we're able to fold that back into the schools. You know, it's a savings.
all right.
As you can see, it's not quite a penny on the tax rate. Those, you know, you're talking of those things there, it's $3 million.
And with the things that the facilities committee has wants to do, it can make a bigger difference for you.
It could be millions of dollars. Over, you know, over the years.
Any other comments on this? Mr. Acuff?
Just for clarification, when, like, two new schools were just built, the county had possession of them while they were under construction.
And we own them
And-
now, still.
And you, all the materials and everything that went into them, you could file for the sales tax and get it back.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, and then when the school is completed, it's turned back over to the Board of Education
At a time, so.
at the appropriate time.
At the appropriate time, yes.
And that's part of the financing deal, that we would have it so long, then it would go back.
They basically quit claiming it to the county.
Right.
And then we sign an agreement, the county signs an agreement with the Board of Education to operate it as a school. So they've still got full control over what's happening.
And Mr. Manager, Mr. Smith,
Yes, sir.
if I hear you correctly, it's a foregone conclusion that the NC House plan or the NC Senate plan, one of the two of those is gonna go through. So your idea is that we support the NC House plan if we're gonna call in, say, we may not be satisfied with either one of them, but this is the one we prefer. Is that,
The Senate plan as drafted and as it's moving forward and being discussed, it is a negative to the county. The NC House plan is not.
All right.
So if you had to choose between the two,
that's my point.
House.
All right. That's-
Or they stay current as it is and don't change it. So it's either leave it as it is, go with the NC House plan, but do not move with the Senate plan.
Well, leave it as it is our preference, right? I mean, if it was an absolute, we'd want to leave
Well,
it for our benefit.
the House plan actually gives you a slight increase.
Well, okay.
Gives you a slight increase.
It's expanding the items that you can collect. sales
That's right.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Potter.
I would recommend that we, in fact, I'll make this in the form of a motion, that we ask our clerk to draft an email or a notification to our legislators and ask that they support the North Carolina House plan in the budget negotiations.
Motion is on the floor. Any discussion? Mr. Kennedy.
Have you got anything to back that up from the state assembly, from the association?
Yes, sir.
Daughtry?
Well, yes, I believe their email did in fact indicate that we needed to support the House plan. Am I-
Do you know how late, follow up, please? Do you know how late that was? I'm looking for it now.
We actually were, yesterday,
Yes.
we received it at, it looks like 7:30 last night.
It was
Yeah,
last
it was
night.
after, yeah, it was 7:31, in fact, last night, from Todd McGee.
I have one more question I'd like to ask.
Just a minute.
I think it was from, who's Todd McKee?
Todd McGee.
Yeah, let's see if Mr. King is finished.
All right, one more with the same,
I've re-forwarded it to you also, Mr. King, just in case.
passed it. It's House Bill 998. And
Mhm.
also, with that, the House restores the lottery status, keeping allocation at $100 million.
Correct.
Okay. I'll go along with that. Okay, that's it. Just want to make those two matched up.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Camardi.
I just want to ask one question, and that may not be awaited around this today. The current situation is over here on the left side, and that House plan is better than the Senate plan. And a moment or two ago, he said, well, the House plan gives us an increase, and I do see that. Well, this is the question that I think has been battered about in North Carolina. The House plan will call for more taxes from certain groups. And if we get more, that means that somebody in North Carolina is getting less. And I'm concerned about the groups that's going to be impacted by this, us getting more and somebody else getting less. And if we vote to approve or support the NC House plan versus the NC Senate plan, that sounds good, but I'm questioning whether or not, and I hear you say do a resolution to go for support this, but I would not want us to dash out there to send us support somewhere when do we have any kind of information as to how negatively even the NC House plan is going to affect the average person in the street, and I know this body is concerned about what revenues we can get to do great things with, but anytime we get more money to spend for this board, that means we got it from somebody else.
Any other comments? Mr. King?
Well, here again, Mr. Cromartie, I've advocated for the association for so long, and that as you grow to become more sensitive to the association, you will find that Mr. Thompson and Ms. Rebecca and the staff will certainly be on top daily of what is happening in the House and the Senate. And as you will see and go along with what you're reading, as long as you stay on top of what Marshall Wilson sends you every day, you'll definitely be amazed at what you can recover and reading this, because that's exactly what I'm doing. That's why I asked the question when Mr. Smith said what he said, because this is up to date last night and again this morning, and it's vital. And these people are they're certain of what they're talking about.
I have no question that they are certain about what we see on this piece of paper, and a question still stands.
Okay.
And I realize what they do are working for the county commissioners, and I've had the privilege of listening to them talk, and I still have concerns that, of which they can't do anything about. I mean, they work hard to let us know, but they can't impact beyond what we help them do with the House members and so forth. The question still remains in my heart and soul as to if we support neither one of these with a resolution says that we support the idea that they're reducing something from somebody to be able to move more to the right column. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Any other discussions? We have any others? We have a motion on the floor to send to our legislatures the NC House plan, as it shows, recommending that. You want to restate that motion?
Marcia, read that and lose you back to it.
Let's back up to that motion.
Yeah.
To ask the clerk to draft an email to our legislators to support the North Carolina House plan in the 2013-14 budget.
Okay. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, likewise. Motion carries. Thank you.
We'll take care of that. Okay.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
You've given us some other information.
Yes, sir. As Mr. King stated earlier, we have in the last couple of weeks received information from the school board about their projects, and the county and the facilities committee had been looking at our priorities as a county and looking at our projects. So what I have is what I'm calling version 1 and new version 2. Version 1, and this is a page that would come out of the Davenport plan, and Davenport will do what they call financing assumptions behind these. But I wanted to clarify some things before we move forward. First, just to kind of give you a structure, first you'll see at the top in blue, 2013, you see the fiscal years, and then you have columns below. The first section, you have what we call use of funds. Below that, sources of funds. And then you see debt sources below that. Now, what I've tried or attempted to do was based on conversations with the Facilities Committee of the Commissioners, information that came from the school board literally in the last 2 weeks, and conversations that have occurred with the superintendent in the last 5 to 6 business days. I have incorporated, starting in 13-14, the Mount Olive Library. I used the $3.5 million. That was the number. That obviously can come down, and we're hoping that will come down. But those are the monies allocated. You actually have a reserve set aside for that. So that can go up or down, but does not have an impact to the actual budget that you're considering now, just to the reserves or cash reserves that you restricted for that purpose. One thing I do want to mention is you go down 1314, you'll see like Wayne Community College pay-as-you-go. That is the annual capital. Now, that is new, and we felt like in talking with Davenport, Ms. Holt and I, that we really needed to include that because it is a continued, we fund that every year. So we included that. School pay-as-you-go, that's the $2 million, and we did some increases there, not that you're going to give increases, but there sometimes are incremental increases, so we tried to look at a 2.5% or somewhere around that. Pay-as-you-go, county capital, this is about what we would be spending because we did reduce capital on our side this year. Then as you go to 1415, the next year, Health DSS, that is a number that I worked with Milford Smith on in the Facilities Committee to look at an additional 50,000 square feet. Now, that number, I will tell you, I feel like is a little high, and so does Milford, but I wanted to have a worst-case scenario. I didn't want to put in 7 and find out that it's 7.95. So Milford said he thought that was a very safe number based on the square footage, and talking with some health facilities, you would have to build clinic space, and that's a little more challenging and requires some other type HVAC, negative pressure rooms, that type thing. Now, as you come down that 1415, you see central attendance, Spring Creek, and Charles B. Aycock. And I have listed those and the numbers from the school board. And I did the same as pay-go. Now, what I also included is and this is all about timing, the $9 million, the 1.8, the 3.8, the 6.6 would come to 21.3 million, and it would, what we do is look at it on a worst-case scenario of financing. And in talking to Davenport, they said, you know, there were some, I think, inquiry by the school board that we would match, and I don't think they necessarily said cash, but they said that you would match whatever they came up with. And in talking with Davenport, and when they get the financing assumptions done, they'll come and present that to you. They've said that they would look at financing because it's very cheap right now. The other thing is you've got a lot of projects coming up in the next 4 to 10 years. And you obviously need dollars in reserve to be able to leverage financing.
Last time we spoke about that, you said, you know, leverage financing to keep our credit rating. What is the appropriate balance in that account that it should be before we hit that account?
Well, it depends. What they'll do is in the financing assumptions, what they'll do is they'll come back and they do, based on industry standards across, not just North Carolina, but across the U.S., they will do what they call debt ratios, and that is a per capita debt ratio, and the credit rating agencies look at it and go, like right now we're very low because we have low debt. But as that goes up, your credit worthiness and risk becomes higher, rates become higher. So they will give you, in that assumption they'll do over the next few days, they'll say you need to stay between here and here. They also may recommend using some cash in increments over the life over the next 5 to 10 years. Well, you've got part of the capital reserves, you'll use some of that. But in this first, they said look at financing, that is worst case, and then we'll come in and look at cash injection up front or at the end of a project, and they give us those proposals. Okay? But this is right now is just a listing of how they kind of come out. You move to 1516. We have included detention center and looking at some of the items. We don't know where we are with the Wayne Correctional, but we looked at a $4 million, it may be less than that, it could be a little more than that, but we're thinking 4 may be for some upfit that might have to happen. So we tried to incorporate that in. Milford and I discussed that. Now, Wayne Community College, that $8 million, that is the energy plant. And in talking to Don Magoon, remember they said they would get that was a closer figure on the plant, and that they thought in the next 24 to 36 months that you would have to obligate to some sort of an energy plant. As you move down this, the next you will see New Spring Creek Grantham, the $17.639 million is on the new, hold on because I had a note on this just in case you ask me. The new site in Grantham is 46 acres, okay? And that's adjacent to we have Mr. Aycock, a communication tower there. This is the new site. The old site has 19 acres. It also has some ball fields and that type thing on it. But the 17.639 is a number from the school board to build the middle school, okay? Then as you move across that line, the other 17.639 is the new Spring Creek School, okay? And then when you go to version 2, I'll show you how that changes. Then you'll see pay-go. When you go to 1617, you will see, I included, I'm going to have to get these things start running together a little bit for me. Day Reporting Center. As we are able to, and the Facilities Committee look at this, as we are able to migrate to a facility for Health DSS, we would be able to, and now we have some thoughts that East Point may be looking at other alternatives. If that's the case, we would have room without additional rent for probation's parole over in the Borden building, but the additional square footage at Health and DSS would allow us to do some consolidations, but would also allow us to renovate the Sullivan building, which is on Ormond Street across from the courthouse, to move day reporting without having to buy additional buildings. We're using existing space. Now, that is an estimate, kind of a worst-case estimate of renovations. We think we can do it less than that, but that is worst case, looking at escalation of costs for HVAC at 10 to 15% a year, and Milford came up with that number. Now, I also included the Regional Agricultural Center. Now, you'll see on most of these, we looked at financing, okay? But as you inject cash into this, and that's where Davenport's going to try and do that, to try and negate and keep down any tax rate increases as much as we can. The next one that you will see, you begin as discussed in facilities, the EMS satellite facilities. You'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. $2 million worth of construction of what we call a cookie cutter design that we could place in 5 places in the county and create EMS satellite facilities and replace some of what we have now. Moving down, airport hangar. There's been a lot of discussion with Jetport Advisory Committee about the need for a new corporate hangar. As you heard the reports today, we're full. We have a little movement there, but there may be a need, and we feel like that's probably going to be there in the next 3 years for construction of a hangar with the electric doors and that type of thing. So we did include that. We discussed that in facilities.
And you estimate that to be 800,000?
Yes, the last one cost us $700,000, but it's in talk. We've had 2 builders to go out, and they think right now we could do it for about $800,000. Okay. Then when you move over, let's say we go over to 1718 EMS station, consolidated E911 data center. We had looked at that at what we call site number 1. That is $2.3 million. We are in such hopes that we can get the EMS money, 911 monies released, Mr. Aycock, that we could help build this. So this is a worst case scenario, but we're hoping that would allow us to do that. Now, on Wayne Community College, as you move across, they then had, remember the plan, and we went out, Facilities Committee, Mr. Chairman went out, we met. They have several buildings they want to renovate and construct, and I've included those in here based on their requested timeline. I'm not saying this is when you have to do it, but I'm saying this would kind of be a worst case in trying to put these things in some sort of financing packages over years. Then as you go down, you'll see the Spring Creek School, 17.639. You go into 1819, you get a little bit of a breather, but not much, except for the EMS station. Then you go to 1920, and that is the airport runway extension of $8.5 million. The majority of that being paid for by federal funds, because we now have made all the matches required to be able to do that if we can get that approved of $8.5 million. So that would be grant money predominantly. Then you'll see Wayne Community College, that's a renovation. Then you see new elementary, new middle of $29.6 million. These are 2 schools, $29.6 million. Then as you move across, you see EMS in 2021, and you see the last building at Wayne Community College on their 10-plus year plan of $17.3 million. Now,
You're not closing down any schools,
not yet.
any of these plans.
Not yet, not on this plan. But then when you go to, let's run to version 2 just a second.
If you're in version 1, you're
No
not
closure.
closing any schools.
No, sir.
And you're adding, how many, in version 1?
In version 1, you are adding 1, 2, 3, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 schools.
Okay, so version 1, you're not tearing down any schools.
No, sir.
You're adding 4.
Yes.
Have you implemented any of your sustainability?
Once Davenport does there, what I do is, in fact, I have just asked for from the school board an updated school annual operations costs. They had given us the figure before of around 1.5 to 1.6. They now say it's,
in version 1.
well, you don't include it in the financing piece. We do that in a separate piece below that. That does not go in your financing piece
Yeah.
because it's operations, but I do that and I include that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if
And
I'm
it shows
looking at
additional
version
tax
1,
increase.
I'm looking at 4 brand-new schools.
Yes,
I'm looking at no sustainability, I'm just looking at 4 brand-new schools.
That's correct.
No closures, okay,
that's correct. You are correct.
okay.
Yes, sir. Now, when you move to version 2, what I've done here is everything is the same except for, if you will go down to New Spring Creek and Grantham, okay, go to that line, and what I have changed, and I've talked to Dr. Taylor about this, and I've said, if we built on the new 46-acre site in Grantham, a K-8. Now, and I know you heard conversation about that this morning. What we were asking is could they look at a K-8 that has some of the core services. The schools are not really in the same school. They're on the same site, share administrative space, those type things, but have separation. And there are lots of schools around North Carolina that do that. That is, and the approximate cost I was given was $30 million to do that. Now, that would close the original Grantham school. That would close that school. That's what this is calling for. Now, you move across, then you still have the new Spring Creek school, which is additional. So, you have 1 closure on version 2, 3 new.
But no sustainability?
No, and that's what I would have to include on mine, which is, they've given me a new number per school. It was 1.5 to 1.6. They're now saying it's just below 900,000 per school. I can only go by their number, but I will tell you, it is my belief that we need to use the higher number to be safe. Now, I'm not saying that I don't trust the school's number or Dr. Taylor Nan. I'm not saying that at all. And I've told Dr. Taylor, I said, because that's half of what the other figure was. I'd rather be safe than sorry in looking at, as Mr. Keenan just said, sustainability, because what is the old adage? It's not necessarily the price of the car, it's the gas and the tire and the oils for the life of the car. And if it, yes, sir.
So, when you establish a bond referendum,
Yes, sir.
do you establish a bond referendum to create and build schools without sustainability, or do you include sustainability when you establish a bond?
In talking with several counties who have done this, and those who have been successful at it have said, you need to make sure that you are open and honest with the public. That when you say, we're going to build X number of schools at X cost, and the new rate will be for financing X, 3 cent, 10 cent, whatever it is, that you also include in that. It is not included in the bond referendum. You're not voting on, the citizens are not voting on the, I'll use your words, Mr. King, the sustainability tax piece. What they're voting on is the financing piece, but that you include in your educational materials for the public to build these schools and sustain them moving forward. The cost moving forward is X cent per year. That way it's full, it's honest, it's open, and people understand, because you don't want to go and say it was 5 cents to build these schools. And then you say, okay, now it's the year 1, we're opening them up, and by the way, we're increasing another 5 cents because that's what it costs to operate. you tell them up front. So, I mean, it's a great point. I think you need to do that, and let's just be honest about it.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Doherty.
Is there any advantage to actually having a bond versus just simply borrowing the money as low as interest rates are? I'm just wondering whether or not you, since you've got many other sources of financing, is there any advantages of going with a bond?
Well, there's a couple things, and I don't pretend to be an attorney, and then Borden doesn't pretend to be a bond attorney, and we've got really good ones. There's a couple things. I did ask Davenport about that issue and said, right now, you know what? They said, well, for consensus building and for political reasons, and let's just say what it is, that you generally would ask the public, the citizenry and businesses, what do you want to do? If it causes a tax increase. Now, you might find one that says it doesn't, but still a lot will, they'll put it out on a bond referendum. But I will tell you, it is cheaper today by resolution and doing certificates of participation or just conventional financing, because you don't have all these other expenses of the bond. Now, that does not preclude you from doing hearings in public meetings, getting input, because that's important. Because as our, and Bob High's been around a lot of years, he said, you need to do that because you need your public engaged in these projects, be it bond in that way or in conventional financing, and get their input by doing public meetings, survey, whatever you do, and being honest on what the costs are going to be. What I think what this does is this requires in-depth discussion between this board and the school board, the administrations, to sit down and say, what is the real timeline? What are the real priorities? And when we bring these financing assumptions back, there will be tax increases. And also with sustainability, there will be tax increases, as Mr. Keene was pointing out.
Mr. King.
The purpose of the comment on bonds is that bonds can only take you so far. It can take you halfway, it can take you 2/3, and then the other third or the other 50% take you for sustainability, which requires a partnership with the Board of Education and sustainability of what their overhead is going to be to continue. So the bond does not take care
That's true.
of the whole piece.
That's exactly right.
It can take care of 50%.
20, 50, 75, whatever you choose. Yeah, and you could do that. You could say, and let me just move and let's lump schools and county projects. We may look at Central Lieutenant Spring Creek Charles B. Aycock and our health DSS and say, look, we're going to do some public meetings that we want to roll all this into one financing and have one product. You may want to do that, or I'm not saying recommending it. I'm just saying you may want, and when you look at Wayne Community, maybe a year that you've got a little county, a little schools, a little Wayne Community. But we've got to figure out what can we afford. And when they bring these assumptions back, these financing assumptions, and they show you where you move on those ratios, like when you get out of what they call general policy or out of industry standard, that's when you go, I'm going to have, Pam's going to get a call from Moody's and Standard & Poor's saying, we'd like a phone interview. And when they do that or show up, we usually know they're looking because they have a question or there's a red flag because we get out of kilter with our debt ratios. Right now we're low and we know we can take some debt on, but how much are we willing to take on? How much is the public willing to take on?
That was my question. Would Davenport give us an idea of the Central Lieutenant, Spring Creek, and Charles B. Aycock, the first three?
What the impact is, yes.
Well, that's $12 million, but the school board in their last communication with us says that they want to split that with us, 6 for the county, 6 for the school board. Will Davenport help us, or is it up to us to decide if we want to do that or include all that $12 million in a financing package?
Davenport will help you with that. And part of what I've asked, I was very specific in my questions to Davenport, was the issue of the school board utilizing it, because they do have several $1 million. They've got $9-10 million in that sales tax, and they got lottery funds. Of course, they said you use your lottery money because you could lose it, and that's usually I'd get that first, and we've all said that. But when you look at their sales tax, when I've said, look, they're looking to use a high number of that, Davenport went, whoa, wait a minute. you probably need to use that for your smaller, short-term stuff and not your long-term. You need to look at financing on those because they're going to need cash. Because remember one thing that's not here is that 9-point-some million in security and general renovations. How are they going to do that? Now, they wanted $3.4 million from the county out of their sales tax, which is their money. Dr. Taylor and I talked as late as yesterday, and I told him, I said, I put in 2. Now, they can request all of it, but I think I think it is our responsibility to say, it is your money, here's the Davenport plan, even bring Davenport and talk to all of us. We need to be careful how much of that and how fast we use it, because we've got to, as Mr. King said, sustain ourselves over time. It's not all about just this year, next year, it's about 5 and 10 years out. You got to make it.
Yes, Mr. King.
My interest also is that there is no debt. And right now, every month, they're getting somewhere between $360,000 and $380,000 a month that's going into an account. And of course, by the time all of it is played out, by plan, what they're going to do, it could be 3 months, 8 months, could be as much as a year. And they could have in excess of $4, $5, $6 additional $1 million sitting in the account.
That's true. So it's a matter of priority, looking at these worst-case scenarios of financing, but also the timing of this. One of the things that you can do as a board is, in negotiating with Wayne Community College, county projects and school projects, we have to look at all of them, and this is part of, our facilities committee did a really good job. The chair worked with our facilities team, and you cut out in what we looked at future cost of county projects by millions of dollars by looking at reuse of some facilities, reshaping that. Well, we're really asking everybody else to do that too. How do we reuse? And just like on the Grantham piece, nobody's saying that they would have to build a $30 million, but are there savings there on the sustainability piece moving forward? On operations, it's the gas and the tires and the oil that get you, and the insurance, and the additional teachers, and the...
That's true.
That's the big cost. So we're ready for them to run these versions. They'll get them very quickly. You'll see the impact to us this fiscal year is only that you have reserved for the Mount Olive project. But once we get those assumptions back and Davenport meets with you pretty quickly, I would think there would need to be probably a joint meeting where you could talk about it and look at what the plans are.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Daughter.
A few concerns, and that is, with the reserves that are available now, I would prefer that we go ahead and draw down, since the school board has offered to spend from lottery funds and sales tax that they have available, to spend $6 million of these 3 capital improvements projects, the central attendance area, Spring Creek, and Charles B. Aycock, and that I would hope that Davenport would give us the options.
They will.
Use these $6 million, borrow it, go ahead and fund the
There's going to be
entire thing
behind
in
fences
cash.
version 1. There will be 2 or 3 options
So
behind
they'll
that
give
based on
us-
what I'm hearing.
Right, they'll give us some options here.
Yes.
My concern is if we do not use those dollars, that they will. And they will use those dollars not in building schools. And it's my understanding that from those sales tax proceeds, that debt service must come first.
That's correct.
So if we borrow the money, build the school, they must first pay debt service out of those sales tax receipts first, before any other improvements. Am I correct?
Yes. And keep in mind, that is absolutely correct, but also keep in mind that we on an annual basis allocate out of that, right now, $2 million a year. So you would have payments, if we did this, payments for schools, that 30-60 deal, plus the $2 million or whatever that number would be moving forward. Sustainability. if we've drawn all the money down and it's building up, because sales tax, the 70, you've all had, I don't have to go down that road. What if it doesn't grow? Then we get the hit on property tax, because there is nothing else. So what I'm saying is we got to look at all those things. I
Sure.
mean, all those avenues.
Am I correct in saying that we could borrow those dollars in the future?
Talking about for schools or for?
If needed. Let's say that if they're getting $4 million a year into that fund,
Sure.
and you are obligating $3 million
For payments
for
and
payments
annual
and so
capital.
forth. So they only are having $1 million for improvements. Then that would mean that if I'm understanding you, that we may that year have to put $1 million into it.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes. Because we do know that they have, and they entitle it small projects, where they buy school buses, vehicles, small renovations, replace a chiller. They do that out of that pot of money. And I understand that's why they do it. But if that is drawn down to such a level and it's not growing, plus we finance and we use some of that, and obviously it would hit that first, we could find ourselves in the situation that you just said, that scenario of annual capital outlay out of county property tax and other sales tax for that purpose.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda, in my opinion, and I would prefer if we could get 4 of their 8 capital improvements done in the short run. I'd prefer to take them up on using their lottery fund balance and also funds from their sales tax to go ahead and get those items done, borrow the balance, and get that one on the road to completion, and then work on these remaining items.
And I will tell you, that is, I'm with you. I mean, I think you're heading in the right direction. It's part of what I'm kind of directing Davenport to look at that as part of these assumptions to attempt to do that. Because then you've got, we don't, I mean, what will the economy do in 1 year? What will it do in 2 years? What if it tanks?
Here's my concern. And we saw today, and I agree wholeheartedly, that Grantham, for whatever reason, has been overlooked. Now's their time. The difficulty here, again, is I don't think that these parents, these teachers are understanding that if we go and build a middle school and not close down a school, that it is going to require this county to obligate itself on a recurring basis. Every year, we will
Additional
have to
current
pay
expense.
anywhere from $900,000 to $1.6 million every year, and that will only grow as time goes by. Because salaries, benefits, and these other things will only grow as time goes by, versus taking those dollars and using them to finance the construction of a new school so all the students in Grantham can be in a much better environment, a much better school facility. It solves the problem, and the payback is at the end of 15 years, you have paid it all back and the obligation stops. Then you move over to another school. That's my concern.
Yeah, Mr. King.
I disagree with Mr. Daugherty. I disagree wholeheartedly that the people of Grantham do understand. People of Grantham have been led to believe that the property that has been bought for middle school, and that is their mentality for the last 8 years, at least since I've been a commissioner, is that all they've heard is a middle school, middle school, middle school. Even when I ran in 08, when are you going to put a high school? When are you going to put a high school? I honestly believe that the people of Grantham understand right now that it's all or nothing, that they understand politics and they also understand economics, but more so they understand the safety of their kids. Now, the safety of the children, right now, it has been proven that K-8 can be laid out. Johnston County has done it. Mecklenburg has done it. Many, many counties have done it where they have separate your kindergarten and your middle school and your cafeterias and your playground and your bus routes and all of that goes along with a campus spread out over a 40 to 50 acre campus. It's just that today you saw a lot of emotion because that's what these people have been led to believe for many years, is that they bought this land for a middle school. But the economy has changed. And we can't sustain 2 schools, and I believe, honestly, they believe that. They just want a new school, and they want their children safe. It's certainly safer, I think, to put, and I've done the study, and I've seen Board of Education do the study, that it's safer to put K-8 together than it is certainly middle school, high school. Estrogen and testosterone levels, certainly exceed those limits, I think, when you get into those, those ages. But people at Grantham they want a new school. And I think K-8's okay. I think they got emotional today. Of course, we all do get emotional when we talk about our children. But we certainly, I think Grantham showed up today because they weren't included in the priority. When the Board of Education met, it was Spring Creek, it was Inner City Schools, it was Charles B. Aycock, and it was just a little study to see what Grantham could do. And I think they had a right to get emotional because they weren't part of it. They were part of the discussion, but they really weren't part of priority. So I think they'll understand. And I commend the county manager when I asked him to do version 2, to set up, to see what it would look like, to see what the big picture will look like. Let's see what it's going to. Let's see what the numbers come out to be. But not disrespectfully disagreeing with you, Commissioner Doherty. I just want to take up for those who showed up today. Because they love their kids and they love the community, and love their school, and they just want a new school.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I could, and I appreciate that, and maybe I didn't mean to say that they don't understand. What I'm saying is that I'm not sure they have gotten all of the information necessary to draw some other conclusion. But anyway, here's my concern, and I've expressed it ever since I've become a commissioner.
Sure.
Government moves too slow. In private industry, when a decision is made to do something, we set about to do it in the shorter time the possible. We all recognize the fact that we've got a pressing need there. We're speaking of now borrowing these funds in 2015-16. Now, how can we go about moving that project up 12 months and putting the $30,000 over into the 2014-15?
Well, you got to look at the reality, first of all, of there are no plans for these schools. State construction management will take 9 to 12 months. Once they hire an engineer and get plans, or they can do design build, whatever it is. Now, design build may speed this up, but when you do design build, it then goes to state construction management. And there's your 9+ month process. So you're always going to have that. Design build could speed that up so much. So I'm saying there are options out there. But you've always got to go through that. When we looked at the reality of Eastern Wayne and Old Wayne, I remember when I first did this and presented it, a commissioner said, well, go ahead and put it in that next year. I said, it won't happen. I mean, even if we move as fast as we applied, we did it, it's still taken 4 years. I know, and look, I'm with you. I didn't develop the red tape. I sometimes want to cut it off too and paint it something else. But the reality is that's probably, you might move it up a few months, and you might even hit part of 2015, but by the time you obligate to that, you're going to be in that time frame. Even if you said today, we got the money, we're going to go do it, you would be a year from obligating, at least a year, and you would wind up being in that 2015 or so.
Does it speed up the process any by, as an example, using plans already approved by Raleigh, the construction?
It can.
That
It
could-
can,
that could
depends on
speed it
how
up?
updated they are.
Correct.
And again, still got to go to state construction and management, because some other counties, and I want to believe Johnston County some years ago, because they've used some, what I call cookie cutter to get designed, and they did a good job. But then when those are so old, they actually would then go up, and then here we go through the process again. So it depends on how far out the design has been done. Do they meet all the new energy requirements? Do they, whatever. So what I'm saying is, it could be sped up, but that's going to mean a real close relationship of DPI, state construction management, the county, our finance folks, and the school board.
And the last portion of that is, would it speed up any if we possibly went with a lease-back type of arrangement with a private company that's building schools and leasing back?
Not a lot. But I also asked Davenport and talked about that. I'm not finding, that always sounds really, really good, but you got to remember, in that situation, it does expedite it slightly, but there's a cost associated with the profit for this company that does not, and right now they're telling us in our meeting, they said, we would not recommend that to you. It costs you more money. The time you save, look at what you're going to spend over the life of the situation, it costs you. It doesn't give you anything. So, but that's part of what they can discuss with you, because these are the experts.
We do have a secret weapon, Noel. Anybody can get that design build done in 2 weeks.
Well, that was just RFQ now.
Thank you, sir.
That was the easy part.
But the other thing about the schools, though, is that something you can't shorten is the public hearings that's got to be held.
Oh, there are timelines you got to meet.
There's
Yeah.
timelines involved.
And hit the meetings with the LGC the right way and
Yes.
all those kind of things, but that's just part of the process.
Mr. Page?
I didn't say this earlier today, but I support that K through 8 ideal. And I understand that they want both. But in other cases, like in Spring Creek down there, when that elementary school was built down there, there's no other room. You can't build on, so you're overcrowded here, you're overcrowded in high school, so they got no choice but to go for a middle school. If that, I'm not going to criticize the previous board on that, that was their decision. But, a K through 8 decision is probably more financially reasonable. I'd hate to go and build just a middle school and leave those elementary kids in that old building. I mean, solve nothing there. And then, and I'm gonna dream wild here, if once you have that design, you got those kids there, maybe some down the road there, save that old school footprint, and you build a high school. I mean, that's just me talking.
Now you're talking.
Now you're talking, listen to it.
But, that could happen. Sure. But if you don't prepare for it, you got to look long range.
That's right.
You can't just look, like you said earlier, you can't look 1 year, 2 year, 5 years. You got to think in the long term. And I'm hoping this county will grow such that it'll be needed down there, so those kids don't have to be bused all the way to Southern Line.
Well, some of you have stated, and a gentleman mentioned this morning about, then if you understand the sewer line, that sewer line cost is between $2.5 and $3 million for a pressurized line. It's more expensive for gravity if you can even do it. And this is accounting for, we did a PER, in fact, we talked about updating that to Mount Olive versus, Goldsboro, the general system. But that's got to be incorporated somewhere. And it's not on the school plan anywhere. Not a criticism, it's not there. So we've got, and that's a cost. So when we do that, we've got to tack on $2.5 or $3 million to get sewer. That's a reality. We can't hide that. We got to have it, because if you want to fully use that 46 acres, you need sewer. So if you look at $3 million and be able to do all these other things, you could maximize use versus, as the gentleman said, playing on the field over draining lines. I'd rather you maximize use of the property, for whatever facility you wanted. So something we got to talk about.
Mr. King?
So what we can get then is Davenport to come up with a $3 million full-scale K-8, all of these 3 priorities, put it all together and give us what we can do in a bond, what we can do in financing, what interest rate we could get, sustainability, we can get that cost over to the side on what it's going to be. Can we get this by next Tuesday?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I think they're prepared. In fact, they're already working on it for me, so I'm telling you, I'm just pushing on a couple of the issues. I want to make sure I didn't want to jump too far, and then they'll say, well, wait a minute, I need to rechange everything. But if you're at least fine with looking at these versions, because this is a working document, then I'm going to go ahead and fully release them as soon as we walk out of here to have it back to you in detail. And because they're ready. And then have them come down and present to you.
Anyone else have any questions?
I know that's a lot.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Mr. Kamara.
Mr. Smith,
Yes, sir.
as Davenport provides us with information, I want to make sure that we make sure we compare the apples and apples. I listened to you talk about the sustainability and all the teachers that would have to be hired. Now, no matter which school version you build, there's going to have to be X number of students in a classroom, which calls for X number of teachers. And when you're talking about whether you build a building that was joined or two separate, maintained two separate, there's just so many hours the custodians are going to work.
That's correct.
And there's just so many buses, students going to ride on certain buses. So I just want to make sure that everyone, that the costs or the cost savings that you may be thinking about, all those things are factored in, because, you know, you might think that you'll do a K-8 and it's going to save X number of dollars versus having two, but you're still talking about there's going to be so many children in the classroom and so forth. Now, prior to coming to work, coming your Monday, the principal called me earlier that morning because I left a message on her answer service to call me. And I would want this group to hear from the principal the educational rationale of the reason they wanted the K-8 school versus and have them separated. Saving the money is great, and from a year to year, I understand that. But I also want this body to be fully understanding of how the community feel like they would best educate their children. And yes, Mr. King, we want them to be safe and all that, and I believe they can. They did share with me that there was a part of that building they would be torn down, but there was a part of it that had been renovated in some previous years, and maybe Mr. Smith or Mr.
It's prior to mine.
Yeah,
It was
somebody
actually before mine.
before your time, where they talked about it having been renovated, and from listening to her discuss it to me, they felt confident that that building, that's not where the mice and the rats and the bees were evidently. It was some other older part of that. So some part of it is, they feel like can be used. And before we get absolutely so far, I think, and it's been probably 2 or 3 years since it's been 2 years or 18 months since I've been in the building, but it might behoove all of us to go take a look at that building before you say, well, this part can't be used. Absolutely. I would just want you to be real methodical in your determination as to what building you think would be the best for the community. Listen to the principal. Education feels like that a K-8, a 5-8, the middle school concept would work better, having the elementary kids in the middle school. So I just want to share that with you, since I did talk with her, so that you will understand from her perspective.
Any other comments, Mr. King?
Yes, sir. Analytical. My wife says analytical sometimes, but methodical, yes. Been on the planning board for 9 years. As Mr. Aycock and I have witnessed, we've witnessed up to 5 to 8 subdivisions a month being approved with approximately 60 to 80 lots. And then, of course, Mr. Camardi, you've been on since we were on there pre-recession, and you've been on there post-recession and seen maybe one
It's picking up
every
speed.
3 months.
It's picking up speed.
And what we've got now is probably 65 to 70% subdivisions without any homes on them all over the county. And as we grow, what do we do with all those subdivisions if we continue to operate more subdivisions and approve them, and we have more lots that are vacant? Do the same thing with schools and school children, is that when you locate these subdivisions and they start to grow, you look at, are they beginner homes, are they kindergartens, do you have tricycles or bicycles, or do you have the elderly people? So you do that with demographics, and that certainly doesn't come from this board. It comes from the Board of Education, because they do the demographic study, and they're the ones who see the growth patterns in the county, knowing where the schools are to be built. And then no one said it better than Mr. Bell here this past week, is looking at schools that have about a 40% occupancy rate and 70% vacancy rate. And why in the world do you continue to, move in an area when you have schools with a declining student rate, student number? So as you look at building in the future, you look at the areas of the county, and then you look at where your starter homes are going to be at your 130 to 160,000, 100% financing, no money down, kids that are in tricycles that have to go into kindergarten, and then moving into areas where your junior high and your high school couldn't go. So yes, all those demographics, absolutely. But of course, you would look at the Board of Education to bring you all those figures, because that's the demographics in which the county would be growing, seeing those areas, high schools in particular, where to build those high schools.
Thank you. What do you need from us, Mr. Smith? You need for us to
If there
approve?
were no objections, I'm just going to move forward and allowing them to complete the financing assumptions and have these back to you just as quick as I can get them.
Okay, both.
Or next week if I can get them.
Yeah, both of these version 1 and 2.
And there'll be various options behind those, behind each version.
Okay. Is there any other comments? Mr. Dodd?
Just want to make sure, we're not committing to the plan or anything, it's just a financing plan
These
that's
are
coming to
work
us.
documents.
Okay.
These are work documents, draft form. We can use them. It's a guide only.
It's a guide only, and we can shift from one.
You have,
to the next.
as I understand, you're approving projects as they come to you. You have not approved any project.
Mr. Bell?
I just have one question. When you do this study, or not a study, but when they do this, bringing this information, is everything going to be inclusive? Like, when you talk about spending money, you got to know where your tax rate and all that stuff is going to go. I
Yes.
mean, you just can't spend $100 million and your tax rate going to stay down to a certain level.
Yes,
So all that stuff got to be inclusive, so we'll understand.
yes.
Uh,
We'll include it.
What's
Okay,
going
Yes,
on.
any other? Do we actually need to take a vote on this?
It's still a working document. It's a working
Working
document. I just wanted to let you know
Okay.
why, because based on, because we are where we are, because it's the latest information from the school board.
Yeah.
It's 2 weeks.
Mr. King?
For clarity, next Tuesday, are we going to meet before next Tuesday?
We are working this afternoon, and once I get because I have the updated, what we're calling tabulation sheet, to give us our totals for the final budget. My hope is that we could meet Monday to go over any changes, any thoughts based on that we get and meet Monday, that way you'd be prepared for Tuesday and give us a chance to get the budget ordinance together, because we have to give you a budget ordinance. And it's just a matter of plugging in the numbers in that ordinance. So I was looking at Monday possibly.
If it's ready before, I can move.
We can,
I move that we meet Monday in order to have everything ready for Tuesday.
okay.
Okay, motion, you making that a motion?
Could we do
Okay.
maybe right after lunch, that way if we needed Monday morning to make some changes
Yes.
or anything? Maybe right,
We have a motion on the floor by Mr. King to meet Monday. What date is that?
could be 1:30, 1:30?
Monday at
1:30.
1:30?
Mhm.
Here?
Yes.
Okay. Motion's on the floor, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed?
So we don't have to adjourn, we just recess, Mr. Attorney?
You'll have time enough to give notice.
Yeah, we've got
Okay.
time to serve,
Yeah,
okay.
to give you
to
notice.
post. We do.
Okay.
And your lunch is here.
What the what?
Your lunch is here.
Oh, okay. I need to come out of work session, right?
No, you can just adjourn the meeting
Okay.
if you're done.
Okay, is any other comments or anything that we need to come before the board this time?
Yes, sir, I know what it actually means to be a total pain in the neck. I move we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
On that note.
Raise your right hand.